Dave Sharpe, and welcome to Wake Up Legendary. Today, I'm going to be talking about something that is not only important in our country right now, but I'm going to talk about specifically myself. All right, so I want to be very clear about, how I'm going about this conversation today, which is potentially not what you think it's going to be. It's going to be somewhat controversial. It's going to be somewhat, hopefully, thought-provoking. And my goal really is, after a week here of sort of sitting in reflection, in a sense, and also doing a lot behind the scenes. I think one of the things that that is true for me, and I think it's definitely true for everybody, is that what happens publicly, social media, so forth, is not a full reflection of somebody's life. So this is the essentially the first time that I'm talking about this situation in a public forum. Obviously, at Legendary Marketer, we have a large team here. We have in between 20 and 30 people that work full-time here in Legendary Marketer. We're a very diverse team, and I addressed our team yesterday, and I'm actually thinking about releasing a clip of that talk, because what my hope is that I want to be able to help other business owners figure out how to navigate these times. Not because I think that I'm right, and not because that I think that I have all the answers, because I in no way, shape, or form think that I have all the answers. But I do think that there's a certain approach that I have to this situation that feels right, and that feels and I don't mean righteously, but I think I hope it's helpful to you, and I hope it's helpful to you whether you're just a somebody who enjoys watching my show, enjoys watching and being a part of our community, or whether you're somebody who's a business owner or a marketer getting started in this industry, or getting started figuring out how you're going to be successful. And I also my hope is that this conversation today is helpful to you if you're a business owner leading a team, or if you have influence over people. And I believe that I do, and I take that responsibility very highly. I think it's an important responsibility for anybody who's in any sort of leadership position, or any sort of position of power, any sort of position of influence, to weigh in. And I know that developing my leadership and my communication, and particularly my leadership skills over the years, has been the most. It's been a beautiful thing. It's been the most powerful thing that I've done. Because it's helped me to be more successful in business financially, as a direct result of learning about some of the things that I'm going to talk about with you today. So I want to get one thing out of the way before I go into some of my thoughts about the George Floyd situation, about racial injustice, about my takeaways, and how I'm responding to this, and also how I think that I'm going to become an even better man, business owner, and marketer because of this situation. And also, I want to share those thoughts with you in hopes that they'll be helpful to you. In no way, shape, or form today I'm going to tell you what to do, how you should do things, how you should think, because quite frankly, in many ways, I think that's what's wrong with our country. I think that's an approach that people use that's really righteous, as if they're right, and unfortunately that creates a lot of divide. So I want to say that I believe that the officers should be arrested, all of them, and tried. I believe that there's a lot of really good cops in the world, and I believe that there's also I believe that we also have an element of our system that creates that creates bias, right? Whether it's hardcore racism or not, it creates bias. And I think that we need a lot of change, and I think we need a lot of leadership, and I think we need a lot of education, and I think we need a lot of empathy, not only in police training, which I know nothing about, but it's clear when we look back in history, we can see that change is something that's important that needs to continue to happen. I personally empathize and agree with Black Lives Matter's protesters and believe in them, in their right to be heard. And I think that violence, and I think that destruction of property, and of course destruction of lives is intolerable. I also believe that people are more important than property. So I believe that right now it's a tragedy that property is being destroyed. I think it's a tragedy that people are losing their businesses. God forbid, we've already gone through coronavirus, and now there's many people who are having property and business destroyed. But I'm less outraged by that, and I'm personally more outraged by the loss of life, particularly African American life, and that's my personal stance. I want to be clear about that, and I want to be clear about just where I stand. Now, let's go into how I think that I think I'm going to walk away from the situation as a better man and a better marketer. And hopefully, again, I can reach into your heart today and into your head and give you some things to think about and give you some things to ponder. When I got clean from a hardcore heroin addiction back in 2008, and that wasn't my first time that I'd ever tried to get clean before. But when I tried to get clean from a hardcore heroin addiction back in 2008, I really, I didn't really want to take responsibility for a lot of things. But I had a lot of wise mentors in recovery. They call them sponsors, or just people who are part of your support group. And I owe all of the people who played a part, in my journey, my life, because it wasn't particularly all the time things that they did, although being there for me helped me. It was a lot of times the things that they said. And somebody said to me, Dave, you're not responsible for your addiction, but you are responsible for your recovery. And that was something that I've always remembered, because, look, as a drug addict and as a now recovering drug addict, there's a lot of people, places, and things that in my darkest moments I was mad at, and I have been mad at over my life. Is this a part of my genes? Is addiction something that's been passed on through generations? Is my dad to blame? Is my grandfather to blame? Is my grandmother to blame? Whose side of the family is to blame? Where did I get this from? Is it an element of my nurturing? Was it something that happened inside of my childhood? Was it something that my mom did, my dad did, an aunt did, an uncle did? Was it some sort of a matter of how I grew up in my neighborhood? Was it a matter of the people that I was, the school that I went to? Like, what was it, right? And there's a tendency as a human being for me to go in that direction, and what that does is that keeps me from looking within myself, and that keeps me from focusing on the things that I can take responsibility for. And so when that man said to me, Dave, you're not responsible for your addiction, you're responsible for your recovery, that was the beginning of my journey of accepting my past for what it was, accepting my past for who it was, for who was involved in my past, where I grew up, where I came from. And it also was the beginning of me beginning to have empathy for others, to realize that sure, there's evil in the world, and I think all people have the ability to be bad, just like everybody has the ability to be good. But most importantly, it helped me to begin to develop empathy for myself and others, because I started to look at me and realize that it wasn't their fault, it wasn't my fault, but what matters is right now what I do in this moment, in this situation, and the fact that I can choose to take responsibility for change moving forward. And so those words changed my life in a sense. The fact that, Dave, you're not responsible for your addiction, you're responsible for your recovery. And there's an uncomfortable conversation that's going on in our country right now. And I know that you guys don't watch the show or follow me or involved in our company because you want to hear my opinions about politics, and I'm not going to give you those today. What I want to do is I want to give you a perspective that's made me, I believe, a better man, and continues to inspire me to want to grow to be a better man, but also has allowed me to become a better businessman and a better marketer. So please listen to these words closely. There's an uncomfortable conversation right now that's happening in America about race, and for a lot of my white friends, myself included, it's not a conversation that I've leaned into in the past because it is uncomfortable. Because, my gosh, if I lean into it, am I admitting that somehow I'm responsible for racism, that I am even a racist? And the truth of the matter is that any time that I've looked at or not leaned into that conversation, it reminds me of that young boy who got clean in 2008 from that heroin addiction, who needed to hear the words that you're not responsible for your addiction, Dave, but you're responsible for your recovery. And so the way that I'm looking at this situation that's happening in 2020 in America is that I'm not responsible for what happened in the past, but I am responsible for what happens moving forward. And as a father of two beautiful children that I love more than anything in the world, it's my responsibility as a man, not yours. I'm only speaking for myself. I want to be super clear about this because this is a vulnerable topic. I'm going completely live right here. I have no scripts. I'm just giving you my heart right now, right? I'm just giving you my heart. So just hear me out. I'm just giving you my heart. I'm just giving you my heart right now. I'm looking at this situation. I'm asking, how can I be a better person? And here's where the marketing training has come in, because over the past 10 years, or gosh, now it's been 12 years since I did get clean, I've had a criminal record. When I was in my active addiction, I was arrested many times, all addiction-related arrest. I mean, I was arrested for unauthorized possession of a driver's license. I ran from the cops one time and crashed into a house and got a fleeing and a looting. I don't have any violent charges, but I have felonies that stopped me from being able to get a job, that stopped me from doing a lot of the things that a lot of people, my friends, people that I grew up with, were able to do, right? And plus I had this addiction that was weighing me down. So when I was working construction with my dad, and I decided that I said, okay, I think the smartest path for me to be able to experience prosperity and freedom is for me to go out and pursue entrepreneurship, because there's no rules and regulations really. There's nobody who can hold me down. There's nobody who can hold me back. There's nobody that can put a limit on my income. And so as I started to market products and I started to get into sales and have conversations with people, I learned this important lesson that, damn, I really want to be interesting to other people, but that's not going to close sales. What's more important, and this is the lesson that I learned, was to be interested in other people's problems. Interested versus trying to be interesting. And that's become $1 million business principle that's helped me every single time that I go down to research and write copy for an offer. It's helped me to be more influential and persuasive every time that I go to sell something, to market something, to participate in commerce, to participate in this economy that I'm blessed and privileged to be able to participate in. The thing that separated me, I believe, from others in terms of levels of success, is that instead of being right, instead of trying to convince my prospects that they should see it my way, instead what I've done is I've done my best to try to see it theirs. I've done my best to try to have empathy. And I got to be honest with you that the world, that society, I wasn't taught in school how to have empathy. Like, I was taught how to be like argumentative and divisive, and I grew up witnessing a lot of people that would rather be right than happy. And so this skill that I believe is a natural quality, but I had to develop it, of empathy, of trying to understand where somebody's at, trying to understand what it's like to walk in somebody else's shoes, and trying to even understand what somebody means or why they're saying something that I don't agree with, which is probably one of the most difficult things to try to do, right? I mean, just think about it for a second. When that person posts that political picture or quote or image on Facebook or Twitter that you see and you despise, don't you just want to just fire back and tell them that they're wrong and prove to them why you're right and why they're clueless and why they're not woke? I see this kind of behavior every day, and I can understand it. But for me, one of the reasons why I don't participate in a lot of the social media socializing is because for me, it's more important for me to sit back and try to understand where somebody's coming from. It's more important, it's more useful. It's not only more healing, but it's more personally beneficial for me to try to understand where somebody else is coming from. So what am I doing right now as a white man and a white business owner in America in 2020 during these times? Is I'm taking lessons from the playbook that have changed my life over the past 10 to 12 years, that took me from somebody who felt really hopeless and somebody who had a lot of odds stacked against them, in my own way, right? In my own way. And I'm trying to deploy those lessons now. And those lessons are that I'm not responsible for the past, and I'm not responsible for the actions of others, but I am responsible for doing something different today, that I'm responsible for solutions, that I'm responsible for next generations. I am. They're not responsible. I'm responsible right now. And as a business owner, but more importantly as a father, I take that really seriously. So do I think that I have the answers? I don't. And I think that's part of the humility that I've learned to have. Because the older that I get, the more that I realize I don't know. The older that I get, I realize that the more I really need to adopt some humility. Because in the past, when I haven't had humility, I've humiliated myself. So the older that I get, and the more that I experience, and I have the blessing to be on earth to experience, particularly through these times, I'm trying to deploy these lessons that I'm really thankful that have stuck with me. And I'm really thankful that I remember that I was awake and sober enough to hear when they were said to me. So that's what I'm doing today, is I'm buying books. I'm trying to figure out why people feel the way that they do. I'm trying to understand if I've ever played a part in any of the injustice. I'm asking tough questions about myself because I believe that that's my role, and I believe that that's the best way that I can display my leadership. Right now, what I'm doing is, again, I'm buying books. I'm trying to educate myself about our history, not the history that I learned in school. Because what I've realized that a lot of the things that I've been told aren't true. They've been spun, they've been framed, and boy, do I know how to frame stuff as a marketer, right? I know how to frame things. I understand that game. And I believe that there were things that were framed to me that made me believe that things were true that weren't. And so what I'm trying to do as a 36-year-old white husband, father, and business owner in America in 2020 is I'm trying to educate myself. And I'm not trying to educate others. That's not my role here. Look, I'm in the business of marketing and business education, but this is a different kind of situation. So the first role for me as a responsible leader is to educate myself. It's to really understand what's happened over the years that's brought us to this point, and it's to understand what I can do to help. And I believe the first and foremost thing that I can do to help is have tough conversations like this and lean in to tough conversations. Those of you who have been around me for long enough know that part of my job is to lean into tough situations. It's to lean into tough conversations. It's to, as we say in Legendary, carefront people, not confront people, because that doesn't get us anywhere. Usually if I confront somebody, they become defensive, but to carefront them, say, hey, look, this is my truth. This is how I experience you right now. This is some uncomfortable thoughts to think about. So, as I move forward, I believe that this situation is going to help me to understand human nature more. It's going to help me to understand people that are different than I am more. It's going to help me to understand and be able to come as close as I possibly can to put myself in somebody else's shoes, and to me, not only as a human being, but also as a business person. Also as a business person in a capitalistic economy, to where your competitors and my competitors can go do business with somebody else, can go buy from somebody else, that they feel more understood. Oprah said something that was really powerful when I was at a conference with my wife, and I was like one of the only 10 dudes in an entire auditorium of literally 20,000 women, which was an experience in and of itself. But it was a powerful conference. And the one thing that I remember, besides the way that she made me feel, the one thing that I remember was that she said everybody in their entire life, one of the most important, if not the most important things that they want, is to be seen, be heard, and be understood. And so for me, I want to make people feel seen, heard, and understood, and I want to see people. I want to feel them. I want to understand them. It's a desire that I have. And I know, and here's the interesting thing, and I think this is what's such a paradox to this whole conversation and this whole concept, is similar to the most popular personal development in business quote probably of all time, which was something that Zig Ziglar said, which is that if I help enough people get what they want, then I can get what I want. And I believe that really plays well into what I'm talking about, into the concept of being interested in others more than trying to be interesting to others. So yeah, I think that this for me, what I'm trying to sort of like an oil fracker would drill down into the earth to try to bring up black gold, right? For me, what I'm trying to do is drill down into myself to bring out humility, empathy, curiosity. Curiosity. To be curious. One of the most beautiful, childlike things that so many adults lose over the years is to be curious, man. Just to be curious what it's like to live in somebody else's shoes. Just to be curious what it's like to have experience what somebody else experiences. And I'm telling you, for me, that approach helps me to grow to be a better person. But here's the interesting part, because I know you guys come to me for business and marketing advice. That same concept and that same principle helps me to become a better business person and a better marketer as well. And that has been possibly one of the greatest blessings for me, because I've been able to integrate my business into my life, integrate the values of my business and my life together, because they're in alignment. They don't contradict each other. I'm not over here trying to be a better man to have humility and find empathy, while I go over here and I tell people that, well, if they choose my competitor, that person over there, they're bound to fail, right? No, it's like, if I approach customers and clients like that, with that attitude, I'm probably not going to be very successful. But if I approach people, and this is one of the things that we train not only our internal team who works in a sales role, but also the thousands, tens of thousands of people that we've trained in sales over the years, is to ask more questions than to make more statements, man. Ask more questions than make more statements. Because it only takes a second to lose somebody. It only takes a second to lose somebody inside of a sales conversation. So for me again, during these times, those are the things that I'm drilling for within me. Not that I'm drilling for within you. Not that I'm drilling for within anybody else. Not that I'm drilling for on social media, trying to get people to buy into my opinions and tell them that they're not woke or shame them into whatever. Because that doesn't work. It just doesn't. And it's not helpful to me. And I believe one of the most important things that I can do is protect my energy. Because if I'm not well, if I'm not rested, if I'm not fully able to show up and be present, then I'm of no use. And I'm not going to get myself very far either. So I hope this conversation was helpful to you guys. If it was, maybe you could share this with somebody who may need to hear it. Because I think there's a lot of people today who are wondering, what should I do? What should I say? What hashtag should I use? Right? And all those things go through all of our minds. So I'm not trying to say that there's anything wrong with thinking that. There's nothing wrong with anything. It's such a low vibrational label to say that something's good or bad. It's limited. But maybe we can share this message, whether you share it through me with somebody or whether you share it with somebody else by yourself, or whether today's conversation hopefully just challenged us all to drill a little bit inside, to realize that, like me, when I was just getting clean, that I wasn't responsible for my addiction, but I was responsible for my recovery. That I'm not responsible for the entire history of a culture, but I am responsible for what I do today. Have a blessed day. Be legendary. I'll talk to you.